Today we are talking about loudness and how loud to make your music. So first off, if you've seen the -14 LUFS recommendation, you can basically ignore that, because what happened is when all these streaming services started offering normalization to audio, which you can watch another video, the first one that I did about that, but basically you can turn on normalization on streaming services and it'll balance the volume between songs by basically turning everything loud down. So when that started to be implemented, it started to give people hope that, oh, we can actually keep a lot of dynamic range in our music because everyone's going to use that and it's going to sound great. So -14 was kind of like an optimal point where you can have things really dynamic but also not quiet, you know? But that didn't really end up being the case because people always just make stuff loud, and then you have TikTok, you have SoundCloud, you have all these other platforms that aren't doing it at all or as much. So there's going to be kind of an optimal loudness for most things, and just as we have gotten used to the sound of vinyl and tape, and we tend to start to like appreciate the imperfections, we've done that with digital too, and with digital loudness especially. And for me, a lot of music, it ends up feeling exciting and really full when things are loud, but you just have to be careful not to distort the audio, because you can push things really far, but if they start distorting, that can really kind of sound bad, and you're not actually getting much extra loudness out of that, and you can generally, you'll just be making it brighter at certain points, and it's just not good. So I would say that you're never gonna really know exactly how your music is going to be played back on what system, on what streaming service and whatever. So go for that optimal point where it sounds basically as loud as you can make it without sacrificing anything, which is pushed pretty hard for a lot of music. You know, a lot of modern genres can be pushed really hard. But if you're making jazz, or you're making something classical, don't feel the need to compete with like modern pop music or something. You can really ease off of the loudness. If you're releasing a project or an EP or just some sort of grouping of songs, make sure that those are all really nicely balanced together, because people will listen to it all the way through. And even though some of those songs will get taken individually to playlists and whatever, it's still the best practice to do that, to have everything be balanced with it, at least with itself, without worrying too much about how it's balanced with other stuff. But again, if you make it the optimal loudness, you're generally going to fit in fine with all the playlists and whatever. I think one thing that we overlook often when it comes to loudness is that a lot of music isn't played back as the focus of an activity. So it's either we're playing games, or, you know, we're going for a run, or we're working out, or we're going for a walk or something, and we have music on in the background. Or, you know, we're just hanging out with people in the park and we got this little Bluetooth speaker. That's going to be a more common scenario for people listening to music, rather than having this nice speaker setup, blasting it, listening to all the details and really getting into it. As much as we would love to believe that everyone listens to our music that way, the reality is that it's generally a lot more of a casual experience. And so in those casual experiences, they're generally listening to the song and not to the audio file. So in those casual experiences where they are listening to the audio file, or where they're not listening to the audio file and they just want to hear the song, keeping dynamics and not making things nice and loud means that they'll struggle to hear things more. Because when something is lower, the less dynamics it has, the more you hear still. So by making your music nice and loud and full and modern and, you know, like limited, I wouldn't say compressed, but limited, you make it so that in the scenarios where your music will inevitably be played back most often, that it translates really well.